as they can. I think that's sort of where we are now.
Let's bring in Dexter Tiff Roberts now. He's a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Global China Hub. Great to have you on the BBC. This revelation, which wasn't really announced, this was just kind of tucked away in some customs documents, that Chinese exports, smartphones, other electronics, computers will be exempt from the highest levels of these tariffs. How significant do you think this is?
Well, I think it's very significant, and I think it is a reflection of the fact that the tariffs, as announced, would be really devastating for both countries, for both China and for the U.S. as well, and really hit a lot of American multinationals like Apple very, very hard. So this is a very significant change, and I do think it suggests that perhaps there's been some rethinking some of the original declared tariffs by the Trump administration.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that this is simply to give companies a bit more time to make necessary adjustments. But do you think the president kind of blinked first here? And are we now more likely to see the two sides, move towards the negotiating table?
I've actually believed all along that it is very likely that the two sides will move towards some sort of mutually satisfactory solution. I do think that this does suggest that whether or not the Trump administration blinked, I think they're rethinking the implications of such massive tariffs upon China and what would happen in terms of inflation, in terms of continued turmoil in the stock markets, in terms of eventually unemployment in the U.S. if they do go through with these tariffs. I do think as well, we had the senator from the state of Montana, Steve Daines, in China just a few weeks ago, and his trip was to try to pave the ground for an eventual summit between Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump. So there is this desire to try to find a modus operandi.
Well, yeah, and I mean, today all the focus is really on these sorts of electronics and consumer goods, but it's a good point you bring up. I mean, when you talk about Middle America, the places where American farmers are operating, they also stand to have a huge impact on their business too from these Chinese tariffs.
A huge impact. And if you'll recall, already in, I think, February and March, China responded to the tariffs that the Trump administration put on related to the fentanyl issue by putting very specifically targeted tariffs on the Chinese side on things like wheat, on pork, on soybeans, these agricultural products that are produced largely in red states that have been Trump supporting. So I think China's been pretty strategic here. They're aware that it will hurt in the heartland if indeed this trade war goes forward, and they're going to make sure it would hurt even more by these specially targeted tariffs on agriculture, for example.
About a minute left here, but just going back to all of these crucial things, electronics, iPhones, computers, the goal of the Trump administration seems to be to try to bring that manufacturing back to the United States. Is that a realistic goal, do you think?
I don't see iPhones, for example, being produced in the United States. Certainly, that's what we hear from the Trump administration. We used to hear a lot about what they called not reshoring, but friendshoring, getting some of this manufacturing to move out of countries like China that we don't have a very good relationship with on many levels to countries that are more allied with the United States. And that is a possibility to do so-called friendshoring, when they called that. But to actually get the production back on the ground in the United States, I think is quite unlikely. And frankly, I don't know, I find it hard to believe that everyone in the Trump administration actually thinks that that's a doable goal as well.
Dexter Tiff Roberts, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Global China Hub. Great to get your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.